Coming up on the Men at the Movies podcast, we're discussing Inception once again. This time, Britt and I dive into the power of the themes of this movie. Ideas are resilient, contagious, and can define us. Our moments of shame and regret act as entry points for our enemy to infect us with lies. But if we reject the lie and replace it with the truth, we live in freedom. Join us as we discover God's truth in this movie.
The movies and stories we love are gateways to see ourselves and God in new ways.
Every great story borrows its power from a larger story, the story that's written on our hearts and woven into the fabric of our very being.
Hello, and welcome to the Men at the Movies podcast. My name is Paul McDonald, and joining me dancing to the intro music is my buddy Britt. Hey, Britt, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing pretty well, man. How are you?
Doing good. It's interesting because, we were talking beforehand and sort of sharing. We've probably been talking over half an hour now. That's a recurring thing we say on this is we've been talking for an hour. We've been talking for a while. But I think some of the stuff that we were talking about, like just of how our lives were, and, I went and participated in leading a men's retreat and then visiting my son, as you said in your prayer, you said, engaging in things that impact the kingdom. And then when I get home, all hell breaks loose. Stuff, my daughter's car breaks down. My wife and I get in this fight that seems gigantic, rage clouding my vision, literally. Mm-hmm. We're supposed to go out on this date night after I've been gone for a week. And what we're going to do today is talk about how this movie reflects the power of ideas and how the enemy lies to us through those ideas. But before we really get into the meat of the movie, I wanted to talk about a couple things. One, this is our second conversation about Inception, but really this is our first deep dive into the content of the movie. Grayson and I talked before about the sound design, how that works, why that's important. And I think that that's a good episode to listen to if you enjoy good movies, because we really talk about what makes it a good movie. And it's sort of like going to, you go to a wine tasting event and they tell you about the nuances of the wine or all this stuff. So this is sort of like a movie appreciation, a movie tasting event where this is like, hey, this is why sound is important. This is how they do it. This is how they make it. This is how sound incorporates you into a movie, into a story. You can't tell a good story in a movie format without good sound. It just doesn't happen. So we talk about that on the podcast. The other thing I wanted to hit real quick, I've had people talk to me about, hey, we love the podcast. I want to do it. He's got teenage boys. I want to do this, watch a movie with my son and then sort of talk about it like you guys talk about it. But he's not going to listen to the podcast. And that's fine. Hey, if one person listens to the podcast and then you guys go watch a movie together, whether it's your kids, we do some Disney stuff, whether it's like your band of brothers watching, some of the more adult type films. Nope, we don't do adult films. Let me rephrase that. Some of the more gritty films like Inception, where you can say, hey guys, let's get together. Let's watch this great movie and then discuss it. Well, we have questions in our show notes. So if you can't get them to watch the podcast, you just grab the questions and say, hey, when we did Moana, how have you failed? Where have you felt the brokenness of failure, the brokenness of rejection? Where has something been stolen from you? Like we talk about those three sort of archetypes of rejection in that movie. And so those are available on the show notes. We also have the website, menatthemovies.com/podcast, where you've got even more resources, where if we mention a book, there'll be a link to the book, where we have some of our quotes, the themes, and those same questions. One of the reasons that we do this podcast is, hey, let's get together. Let's get some guys together. Let's watch a movie and then talk about why does this movie move us? Why does this movie matter to us? And so with Grayson, we talked about it from a technical aspect, why this movie is important. Britt and I today are going to deep dive into why this movie resonates and is important to us from a content standpoint.
As I was praying before, just thanking God that part of his revelation to us is his revelation into what the devil is doing. Have you ever known someone, or maybe you've had this experience where there's a problem, but no one knows what it is. But then when you finally get a diagnosis, it's almost, as bad as the diagnosis might be, it's almost comforting. And a lot of times it is very comforting. You may have had this experience as in the medical profession, right?
Oh yeah. The not knowing is 10 times worse. Something's wrong. I don't know what it is the worst feeling somebody can have. They could get bad news. They could get the cancer diagnosis, but at least they know.
Right.
Like when you're stuck in that limbo, that's what we talk about in the movie. Yeah. When you talk about the not knowing, that is the worst place that patients can be. And if we see ourselves as sick patients in need of a healer. I like what you said there with that not knowing is a terrible place to be.
And so part of God's love is to say, hey, this is the problem. Like part of the lie that we believe is we don't want to know the problem. Like, you know what I mean? Like we because it's not immediate sometimes, at least it doesn't seem to be. We don't want to be told we're wrong, or we believe a lie, or we've been wrong this whole time, or whatever. But part of God's love is to reveal to us, this is how the devil has lied to you. This is what he's doing. This is how he's trying to hurt you. I'm trying to help you. And one of my favorite scenes is, well, not one of my favorite scenes, but something I saw recently that really kind of impacted me was in Fellowship of the Fellowship of the Ring, when Bilbo was trying to hang on to the ring, and he thought he gave it to him, but he really didn't, and all this sort of stuff, and Gandalf reveals himself for who he kind of really is, and scares Bilbo, but what he's saying is, I'm trying to help you. I'm not trying to steal from you. I'm not trying to hurt you. And sometimes, that's part of the lie. Well, God's correcting me because he hates me. Like, no, he's correcting you because he's trying to get you on a different path, and that's kind of part of what we're going to be talking about today. But part of it is realizing, there is a scripture, again, maybe you can look it up, but there is a scripture that says, do not be ignorant of the devil's devices. Don't be ignorant of what he's doing. You have to know what your enemy is planning, because now that just like with the diagnosis, the reason why people, even if it's quote unquote bad news, the reason why people are comforted with a diagnosis is that the next thing they say is, so what's the plan?
What's next? What now?
Are we going to do? There's comfort in that. And if you don't know what the devil's doing, you're just being manipulated, and there's all this stuff is going wrong, then the devil can tell you what's wrong. Well, you're the problem. Right. No, your wife's the problem. No, he's the problem. Just like you were saying earlier, like I'm doing all this stuff to impact the kingdom, and should it surprise me that he's going to throw chaos in my life and try to hit me and wound me at my most vulnerable point, which is my marriage. One of the most central things that keep me going, right? Right? And, my mentor used to say, used to do this. Larry Shamley used to do this. When he would get frustrated, there'd be a problem, like something wasn't working, it wasn't connecting right, like we were setting up for a gig or whatever. And he would stop and he'd go, this is a test. He'd have to say it out loud, like it, because now I can react differently. If I'm just going to react out of frustration, then I'm going to do something I shouldn't do, probably, right? Or more than probably. But if I'm reacting, if I realize that, oh, this is a test, I'm being tested. So Father, help me, right? I need your help in this test. Show me what to do. Show me, reveal yourself to me. Show me a solution. The Bible literally says, if you lack wisdom, ask, and it will be given to you. Not maybe, okay, like maybe, and maybe not immediately, but like if you ask and keep on asking and seek and keep on seeking, like he's got those answers. And so this movie, to kind of transition back into the movie, this movie, although it's the heroes doing it, so, quote unquote, the heroes of the movie.
Yeah.
Even though they're doing it, this is a heist movie. And a heist movie is where you steal something. And we have an enemy that's out to steal, kill, and destroy. And so as we go into what they do, I think it is actually a great picture in how the enemy lies to us and tries to get us to live according to, because he knows if he can plant the lie deep enough, so deep we don't know it's a lie, then we'll live by it. It will change our life for the worse. Again, I'm not saying these people are evil people in the movie necessarily, but I am saying this is like a playbook of what the enemy does. Yeah. And when we understand it, now we can go, I see you, right? But what was it in the movie with Kaiser Soze of
The Usual Suspects?
The Usual Suspects, the devil's greatest lie or whatever was that he didn't exist, and that's the thing. Like if you can get in and get out without them knowing you were there, that's the best heist, sort of thing.
What we see, and especially in Dom's character, where he has the scene later in the movie where he talks about he feels guilty, and we see these scenes of regret, and we have those things, and those shape our lives. And so I love what you said about it's sort of a playbook. I mean, that's what the Bible is. If you look at the garden, if you look at Jesus, or when Jesus was tempted by the devil, that's basically his tricks. God's holding out on me. Are you really this? Good. Are you really this? Are you really this? He's creative, but he's not. It's the same thing over and over. Once you can see it, you can recognize it, then you can do something about it. And we call those the term we use when we agree with a lie, we believe a lie. We call it an agreement. Mm-hmm. One of the focuses that I have for this podcast, one of the instructions I tell for people is we want to make it practical. We want to make it personal. So as we were talking, I was like, oh yeah, this is actually really applies to the experience I had last night with my wife, where I literally couldn't see straight because I was so frustrated and so angry, like shaking. And that truth, like I actually said, I am not your enemy. You are not my enemy. Like you have to go back to the truth.
Yes.
And this is sort of the umbrella of the arc of where we're going. And I did want to hit on just a little bit of trivia because I think it's interesting that Christopher Nolan got this material like in 2004, 6 years before they actually made the movie.
He got the script or the idea of it.
Yeah. Yeah. But he said he recognized the fact that this movie, it's complex, it's massive. Like you were saying, there's 4 stories almost going on at once in the different dream layers.
Right.
In lesser hands, this is a chaotic mess. But Christopher Nolan realized he had to get more experience in order to pull this off. And how mature of an attitude is that? Mm-hmm. To say, I'm not ready to do that. Let me get more experience. If it was me, honestly, I'd be like, yeah, man, I'll figure this out.
We'll figure it out on the way. And some directors do that.
I got YouTube, right. And those aren't great results.
Well, sometimes they are, but man, it's hit and miss, right? I mean, sometimes you catch lightning in a bottle, but But yeah, as a writer, this time watching through it and just paying attention as a writer, this is a heist movie. This is Ocean's 11, just
in dreams.
but because he places it in a different realm and with different world building, and the actors are so great. But it's got the basic arc, right? He has to do this job he doesn't want to do, right? I mean, there's all this sort of stuff. And
it's the way I can get out.
It's the way I can get out, man. And but he also makes the stakes personal. It's his kids. I got to get back to my kids.
Yeah, we don't care about the monopoly or all this stuff.
Right.
We care about Leo getting back to his kids.
We care about Leo getting back to his kids. That keeps us engaged. That makes us relate to him. That makes us care about him, right? And then he's got to build the team, and then they got to make the plan.
Make the plan.
And they got, and then they got to go over the plan. They got to go. And in this movie, because it's almost like a fantasy realm or science fiction in a certain sense, you got to go over the rules, which you do in a heist movie, right? Like if they're gonna steal from the casino, well, what's the security system like? And but what a lot of people don't know is that there's secret level, and so they can manipulate the rules at that point, right? But it's just a basic heist movie, but because it's so original in the world building and it's well written, that he keeps a lot of it simple enough that you don't get lost. And he introduces an idea and a piece of the world at a time, so then he can spend the last 40. Well, I don't even know how much it is. I think it's like 40 minutes of the movie is the actual heist, the dream heist, the idea heist, the inception. But like you said, there's like different levels. So as a writer, I'm just watching it going, oh my gosh, he's got different levels of action going on with different levels of conflict in each one, with different levels of emotional and inner and outer conflict. And he's got mystery, and he's got stakes, and he's got urgency. And he was able to keep it simple enough, all of these different elements, that it didn't, like you said, it is pretty amazing that he did as good of a job as he did,
I just think that that's a really good way to look at it.
Yeah.
And if we're talking about the enemy and lies and ideas, how frequently I want to be at, a black belt level. But if I go fight black belt levels, I'm going to get beat if I've never taken karate.
Right.
So as you engage in spiritual warfare, honestly, you're going to start pretty basic. It's going to start pretty simple. And a friend of mine talks about these 4 stages of competence, where one is like unconscious incompetence, where you don't know what you don't know. Then you've got conscious incompetence, where you start realizing you know what you don't know. Then you got the conscious competence, where you're like, yes, this is what I'm supposed to do. And it's very structured and rigid. And then the last one, where you're unconscious competence, where you become a ninja, and you do it by reaction. You do it without even thinking. And so, but giving yourself the grace to go through those stages, just like Christopher Nolan did. I'm not ready for that project. If I did it now, I'd screw it up. So I need to do these other ones. And he did Batman Begins and The Prestige and The Dark Knight, so that by the time that he wants to be ready to do this, so that it is not a chaotic mess.
Right.
Then I think most people would agree he did a great job.
Oh, I absolutely. I believe he did a great job. And he really is, a great writer, and he's a great director. I mean, he came out of the gate with a fairly complicated movie, right? With the what was the one where he was remembering it? It was backwards.
Was it Memento?
Oh yeah,
yeah. So he's got on his IMDb, he's got really Memento, Batman Begins, The Prestige, The Dark Knight, Inception, Dark Knight Rises, Interstellar, Dunkirk.
Oh yeah,
Not
Dunkirk.
not a bad list of movies is what I'm
Bad
saying.
list. Yeah, and even the ones that aren't as good in that list are still great. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
you only go, maybe they're not that great because you're comparing them to, The Dark Knight, probably one of the best movies of all time. Like, I mean, that movie, that movie transcends a superhero movie, right? I mean, that movie just is so amazing on so many different levels. But all that to say is, so in this, let's go into what Inception is. So we get introduced to the world. There's a little action scene in the beginning, and they kind of fail at doing this, trying to steal an idea. They're trying to steal something from somebody's brain in their dreams. And then they are kind of forced into this heist of introducing an idea. And they talk about how difficult it is to introduce an idea into somebody's head, because if they know it's not original to them, it won't take, right? They'll reject it. And then there's this, and like you said, there's this sort of, there's a sort of similarity that they draw between a virus and an idea, which I think is also really interesting for our discussion. Like, viruses replicate themselves and hide themselves in our DNA, right? They take our cells and they replicate themselves.
So let's go back to that first clip where he's talking about the resilience, because this is he starts with just talking about ideas in general and then gets a lot more specific. So let's start with this first one where, like you said, these action scenes, he's talking to Saito, played by Ken Watanabe. I mean, just the freaking cast in this is stellar. I mean, Michael Caine has 3 minutes and it's Michael Caine.
Right.
So he's talking about the most resilient thing out there and what that is. And spoiler alert, it's an idea.
What is the most resilient parasite? Bacteria? A virus? An intestinal worm?
What Mr. Cobb is trying to say.
An idea. Resilient, highly contagious. Once an idea has taken hold in the brain, it's almost impossible to eradicate. An idea that is fully formed, fully understood, that sticks.
And he calls it a parasite.
Right. Yeah.
An idea is a parasite.
Yeah. And when you think about it, he's talking about it in kind of both good and bad ways, right? He's saying like an idea is very resilient. An idea will kind of take on a life of its own. And that's why it's a very powerful thing. And so that has, it's contagious. And so there's good and bad with that. It's the idea. That's not in and of itself evil, the fact that an idea has that power. But what our enemy does then is take that reality, because here's the thing about the devil. He's smarter than me. He's smarter than you. He's smarter than all of us.
He's been around a while.
He knows theology better than me. He knows theology better than I could learn if I just studied it my whole life, right?
He's been in God's presence. He's seen God.
In God's presence. He knows exactly how. The only person who knows better how we're created is God. That's the only other person who knows better about who we are. So he is really good at manipulating us and really good at knowing how to take us down. We cannot win against him. We can't stop him. There's no security we have at this point to stop him from doing this. Our only security, spiritually speaking, is Christ. Like that's it. Like that's our only hope. Our only hope is to have his power, right? And with him, what can we do, right? We can cast down imaginations and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. The battle is 99% in our brain and in our heart. That's where the battle is.
And hang on, because I love what you just said. Because we think, like last night, my enemy is my wife, right? But it's in my head and it's for my heart. Like the battle is not external. That's what Paul says. Battle is not against
Right.
flesh and blood. The battle is not right versus left.
Good.
It's not this versus that. It's not against any person. Because the enemy dances when we get divided. That's his purpose. That's his goal, his intention is to divide us. He lives for division.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say my battle is with my wife, that's giving, again, an idea, right? That it's like a virus. It's resilient. It's contagious. And if I'm doing this and taking that concept, then it's infecting my heart. And that's what the battle's for. What am I giving my heart to? Am I believing a lie?
Mm-hmm.
Am I making an agreement by believing the lie that I'm not worth it, that I've screwed up? And we're going to talk more about that as we dig a little deeper about those different levels. Because right now, but I think right here is the battle is in our mind, but it's for our hearts.
Absolutely. And really the battle is for our eternity. That's really, I mean, the battle is for our eternal fate. And the devil knows this. He knows the stakes. He knows how important this is. And that's part of his lie, right? Oh, it's not that big of a deal or whatever he's trying to, deal with. But so for what is his name, Don or whoever in the movie, he realizes how difficult this is because, we will reject an idea if it's not our own. So he says an inception is planting the idea. So, the movie's called Inception because this is what they're trying to do, to plant an idea, but without the person knowing that it's been planted. So that's because it's deception. This is what we have to do. So they have to plan it out. So they need an architect to set up a different sort of world. I don't want to go through it too quickly, but what they need is an architect. One of the things they need as they pull together the team is an architect to make a facsimile of the world, but not the world, because you want it to look like reality, almost like the Matrix, to look and feel like reality.
That thought flashed through my mind almost as you said it about the Matrix. Yeah.
So that's one thing, to create a facsimile of reality that's not reality, that we have to interact with, and again, the devil does this too. Right? He tries to get us to react like you were talking about last night. He tries to get me to react, when somebody says something or tries to do something, or there's a problem, or there's chaos enters the story. He tries to get me to react to that. This is reality. This is what's real.
Yeah.
There's nothing behind it. Don't look behind the curtain. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yeah, you're like, just reality. Accept the fact that water is sort of going sideways. The gravity's not working.
Right. So that's one level. So that's why he, I don't know if she's the other main character, but she's kind of the other main character. How do you say her name in the movie?
Ariadne. Which is interesting because that's named after the guide through the labyrinth back in Greek mythology, I think. I can't remember. So there's the labyrinth. Ariadne is the one who guides them through the labyrinth.
And the idea has to be simple. So that's a whole other level, right? The idea has to be simple. It can't be too complex. It can't be too deep. It can't be too big. And here's the thing, because at some point Dom says you just kind of give the world to he's teaching her how to be an architect because he can't do it and all this stuff, but he's teaching her how to be an architect. He says, you don't have to do all of this. You just have to do enough that my brain will fill it in, that my brain will take it and run with it. So in other words, the devil doesn't have
hang on. That's I want to think of that.
Right.
The little idea that we get whispered in our ears, that we think comes from ourselves, that we take it and run with it.
We're the ones with our own imagination that build on it, and see, the devil knows we do this. So this is part of his plan. That's how we take ownership of it. That's how we take ownership of the lie, is because the lie comes in. God doesn't love you. God doesn't want good things for you. God has abandoned you. You're going to be a failure, whatever the lie is. And then now we reframe our whole experience based on this lie. Well, God's abandoned you. Well, I prayed for this thing and it didn't happen. And this thing that happened really hurt me by this person, and God didn't protect me. So yeah, we start filling in the blanks, and then it becomes our lie. And that's kind of the point of this movie. At some point with lies, the devil doesn't even have to lie to us anymore. When we take ownership of it, we'll just lie to ourselves. And he just sits back and goes, all right, gotcha. There's the trap. And it's the same thing happens with Inception. Like, once the idea has been planted, they don't have to keep doing it. It's going to take on a life of its own.
Yeah, Tom Berenger's character, right?
Right.
In the first one, they had to inject him. They had to pretend to be him. But in the further levels, they're like, oh no, he's going to bring him along with his own interpretation of, we're going to see what he's thinking by how this guy's acting, because that's just his reflection of him now.
Right.
He's bringing him along and acting in a way that is consistent with his underlying belief.
Exactly.
And again, going back to my situation, I'd spent a few days with my son in college. I hadn't been able to do that. And I'm leaving and I'm sad because, I miss my son. I like him.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, did we connect enough? And my fear that my stress that I'm feeling as I'm leaving is, I should have done more. I should have said something different. I should have engaged him differently. I should have done this. Second guessing and feeling like, and again, it goes back. My desire is good. My desire is to connect with my son in a meaningful, impactful way. Right. I want to impact the world that I live in for the kingdom. We want to impact our families, our marriages, our kids, our friends, our job. We want to have an impact for the kingdom. And then something happens, that fear. You should have done this differently. Why didn't you say this? Why didn't you do this instead of this? Why did you make him watch Inception and fall asleep?
Yeah, how dare you?
Because it's not his jam.
Well, and that's really good, because that was another part of what they had to do. So they needed an architect for a different reality. They needed a thief and a forger to pretend to be different people. And how much do we do that? How much do we start to reframe who people are? Have you ever played out a whole conversation in your brain between you and another person, and they piss you off in your imagination? Like, how dare you say that to me? They never said anything. I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but and maybe because I'm a writer and I'm more aware of it, or God's helped me and become more aware of it.
Only daily.
But it's like, you start to have this conversation with your boss or your wife or this person or whoever, and they have no idea. But now
your wife sends you a text in the middle of the day. We have to talk tonight. You're not thinking it's a good talk. You're thinking, how did I screw up? What now? You're thinking more work, and you play out those things a billion times. Play them out.
And it's kind of like that episode in Friends where Phoebe is mad at Ross, and she doesn't remember why. He's like, why are you mad at me? And she's like, you know what you did. And then it comes out like she doesn't remember, and she's like, you did this and this, and he goes, I never did that. And she goes, I might have dreamed that. Like she was mad at
Very
him.
Inceptionist.
And this is another way that the enemy creates division and creates hate, creates bitterness, creates all these things. Is he places a projection in our mind and goes, oh, see, they would say this. They would say this to you. They would try to keep you from this, or they were whatever. Blah, 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 blah. And then now you're mad at this person. And then what happens? It is connected to this. They start to ask questions, because this is all interconnected. because it all has to work together. It's all one thing, but we're trying to break this down a little bit to show how it all works. In order to plant the idea, they have to learn his weaknesses. And what's the first question they ask? What's his relationship like with his dad? That's the first question. And if you're going to make somebody question whether God is a good father, then you attack someone's relationship with their earthly father. That's what you do. If you can get people to question, if you, and again, we've talked about this, there is such a thing as toxic masculinity, but that's only because there's such a thing as good masculinity. It's only toxic because it's meant for good. Like there's an element to masculinity that is meant for good. And so, but if we can convince a culture that any masculinity is evil, then we can get them to reject God. That's what we can do. And that's what we've done. That's what, not me, but that's what our culture is trying to do. Like that's what our culture is trying to do. And this is the culture that we live in, is if we can get people to reject all of masculinity as evil, it's oppressive, it's evil, it's trying to take power over everybody. And it's not true. I'm not saying there aren't men who do that, but there are women who do this too. People do evil things, but there are also a lot of men who are very masculine who protect and they serve and they sacrifice and they take responsibility for things that they didn't do. I mean, there's all sorts of healthy versions of this that we don't point to. So what's the first thing that they ask this guy? I mean, they ask about how can we get him to believe something that's not true? It's a lie. Right? His father never said this about him. They're trying to get this thing into what's his name, Fisher. They're trying to get this thing into his brain, into his idea. They're trying to plant this idea that has never been spoken to him by anybody real, but how do we do that? Well, what's his father? What's his relationship with his father like? And they keep this picture. They keep going back to this picture. There's something about this picture when he was a boy and all of this sort of stuff. And that's what the enemy will do. He'll try to get you to remember an event. He'll try to get you to remember something and he'll reframe it. See, your father doesn't love you because he didn't react to your creative thing the way you wanted him to, or whatever it might be, right? So that's another piece of this.
I love how you said they evaluated where is our entry point?
Yes.
Where can we enter in? Where can we get? The enemy knew. I was excited. I'd been gone for a week. Was new. I was excited to go out with my wife. But where is my weak spots? It's insecurity about my kids. Did I do enough? Did I do them right? Because going back to my divorce, and we're gonna lead back into these like moments of shame that Dom carries around. Right. We have these moments of shame that resonate, that shape us, that are sort of like portals for entry. That if you're not vigilant, if you're not secure, if you're not aware,
good.
You don't leave your back door unguarded.
Right.
And so the enemy knows I'm insecure about my kids. Going back to when I was in the Army and deployed for 6 months. It's like, I'm gone for my kids. I have to make it up to them. And then the divorce, I'm automatically a bad father because I'm not there all the time. And so these things are an easy gateway into my psyche, into my mental state.
Right.
So I'm all the way back, driving 4 hours, resonating. Did I do enough? Did I connect with him? I've texted him 3 times this morning. He hasn't responded probably because he's a college student and sleeps till noon.
And it's so bad in our modern culture, man. If we text somebody, they don't text us back. They're like, "Are you mad?" Like,
we're not friends anymore.
Are we not friends anymore? Like, you remember back in the day? Like, we're old enough where like you called somebody, and it was at their house, and there was no answering machine. So you know what I mean? Like, but we feel like we need this immediate reciprocity.
Well, it's funny because I called my dad on the way home and he answered and he's like, "Hey, I'm sorry, I got to go." Like we were on the phone for like 30 seconds. I'm like, why did you even answer in the first place? You don't have to answer the phone. Back, like you said, there was no voicemail. There was no answering machines. You might get a busy signal. And it wasn't because they were on the phone, just because the cat knocked it off or something.
So we kind of showed the different levels, and it's all working together. And I wrote down, they knew his weakness, they knew his past, and then they manufactured, this is the last part, they manufactured situations to introduce the lie.
An idea is like a virus, resilient, highly contagious, and the smallest seed of an idea can grow. It can grow to define or destroy you.
The smallest idea, such as your world is not real. A simple little thought that changes everything.
So there's two more levels of this. So they create a false world to interact with. They create false images of people, right? And then all of this is working together with, they know the lies, they know the weaknesses, they know the insecurities, they know the past. So they're taking all of those elements, and then they manufacture situations that reinforce and will reinforce that lie, right? So to your point, to continue to use Paul as a guinea pig, right? The enemy, the devil, knows your past. He knows the stuff you've been through. He knows how you felt in the army and leaving your kids and how you felt about that, and divorce, which can be, very traumatic for most people, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And so he knows your past, and he knows the fears and the insecurities based on your past. So then he didn't manufacture a situation that you're like, oh, that's not a big deal. He manufactures a situation that feeds on all of that. He manufactured, the enemy manufactured a situation where it fed on all of that stuff for you.
Because not only was that stuff with Brendan going on, but my daughter calls me late in the afternoon. She is an hour away, and she's like, Dad, my car, when I put it in drive, it doesn't go forward. It'll go backwards. I'm basically at a corner in this road, not in the middle of nowhere, but she's like, not really anywhere convenient. And I'm thinking, we have reservations for dinner. We have tickets to a show. A good father would go rescue his daughter. Never mind that she's 21 years old and has her own kid, right? In my mind, she's like 5 probably. And wrestling with, again, that guilt. Am I disappointing my child? Am I failing her? I should be leaving and going to take care of this. Never mind the fact that my 16-year-old drove to pick up the son, her son, the 3-year-old, so he's not sitting in a car for an hour waiting on a tow truck. Never mind that she's actually called the tow truck and it's scheduled. She's just sort of sitting with the car waiting. Everything's actually technically taken care of. But because of all this stuff, I'm feeling insecure about how I've done, which prepares me for that moment with my wife of, I don't matter, work's more important, which is an old wound, an old struggle that I've had in the past that really haven't had in a while. It's actually something over the last couple of years has been something I've actively fought against. But that old scar tissue probably was a weak spot. And all of a sudden the idea, like a virus, takes full bloom. We're really mixing metaphors here. And suddenly I'm shaking with rage because I feel hurt, but it's not really by anything that she said or did.
Right.
It's all, as you mentioned, in my head.
it's a response to the situation that's been manufactured, right?
Exactly.
And,
Yeah.
And the situation that the enemy, and God allows it, right? God allows you to be put in those situations. So that's what they do in the movie. So they manufacture these situations to expose these fears, right? They put him in a very tense situation. They kidnap him, and right, there's all this sort of, they're putting a gun to his uncle's head and all this sort of stuff. Like they're putting him in a very tense situation where those fears will manifest, and now they can introduce a lie, because you're very vulnerable at that point. And this is what the devil does. And the fact that you said that you were able to kind of combat that with stopping and going, okay, wait a minute, you're not my enemy. I have another enemy that I don't physically see that is actually working against me, right? Like there's something else going on here. That's what happens in the movie. And that's what the enemy does. And then the very last piece of it is they have this brilliant twist or whatever at the end where they decide, what if we get him to help us break into his own mind? Right. What if we can get, like, what if part of the lie is you need to help me break into your own brain and destroy you? Like, you need to help me do this. And although they weren't technically destroying him, but I'm just saying for the enemy, like, part of the lie is you can be a hero by believing this lie. You can actually go into further truth, right? Like the original lie.
He thought he was going into his uncle's subconscious when it was his own.
Right, it was his own, and they tricked him in that sense. But now he's a participant, and this is why repentance is very important, a very important idea in the Bible. There's a lot of reasons, but this is one of the reasons. Number one, the Bible says we've all left him. God didn't leave us. The Bible is very clear. We, like sheep, have all gone astray to our own way. We've all done this. So repentance is coming back to him because we made the choice to go away. We got to make the choice to come back. And he empowers us to make that choice. I'm not going to go into the theological ramifications of saying that, but it is true. That's why we have to repent. But in this case, another part of it is we've been a participant. We have agreed to it. Yes, the devil tricked us. Yes, but we have agreed to it. We have participated in this, and a lot of times we've participated in his deception of other people because we've participated in we're not alone. We're not on an island. And just like him believing this lie is not going to have consequences in breaking up the company for his dad, like he's going to act in a certain way. And when you believe a lie, you're going to act that out in other people and get them to believe lies and cause wounds that the devil can use to insert. See what I mean? It just keeps going. And so this is why repentance is important, and humility and recognizing and admitting, I participated in this. I have to take responsibility for my own part. And God is faithful to forgive. And that's why he died, right? But that's a big part of it.
And that's what we see with Dom towards the end in that conversation with Mal, where he's feeling guilty because he's the one, he knows Inception works because he did it to her.
Right, yeah.
Because she lost her sense of reality. And he tricked her. And he didn't realize, as she said, that the ideas they can define you or can destroy you. And like many of us, I think our weak spots are like Dom's, where he had this whole sort of elevator shaft full of ideas, where this floor was this moment of regret. This floor was this moment of regret, where we have moments of shame or regret that are easy access.
Right.
And what he says in this is we're sort of going to pivot from here to what you said of repent of, well, how can we take these attacks? How can we combat when the battle is raging in our minds? But the first is to identify what is in fact going on And that's sort of what Dom admits to here, of how the guilt of that one thing has shaped and colored his entire life.
Those aren't my children.
You keep telling yourself that, but you don't believe
No,
it.
I know it.
And what if you're wrong? What if I'm what's real? You keep telling yourself what you know. But what do you believe? What do you feel?
Guilt. I feel guilt, Mom. And no matter what I do, no matter how hopeless I am, no matter how confused, that guilt is always there, reminding me of the truth.
What truth?
That the idea that caused you to question your reality came from me.
She actually says the answer. Because what is going to keep us from getting swept away, getting lost in limbo, as it were? One is state the truth. Like I wish I could say, I told my wife, you're not the enemy. I'm not the enemy. And it worked. But I said it. She said it. I was like, why are you saying it in an attacking way? And things like cycled up again. So, but you do have to remind yourself of what is true. The truth is, I love my wife very much. She is my partner. She is, you mentioned sort of this idea, the source, our marriages should be a source of strength, comfort, a sense of security, sense of home. And Jesus actually said this in John 15, remain in me. Mm-hmm. We have that choice. Like he doesn't say, he's remaining, right? He tells us to remain in him. The other kind of cool thing that I thought, when they talk about knowing whether you're in a dream or not, how did you get here?
Good.
How did we get to the cafe?
Yes.
How did we get to the hotel?
Oh, that's good.
In the middle, you say, wait, how did I get here?
How did this happen? That was so good. Because they couldn't remember.
Where did this idea come from?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. They can't remember. You just go 0 to 60.
Yeah.
How did I get here? Where did this idea come from? And ask for God's interpretation. You said earlier, if you ask for wisdom, he will give it. It's a promise. I don't need to wonder if that prayer is going to be answered. Where did this idea come from? Is this idea from you? Is this statement from you? If it's not, you want to throw it in the trash. A buddy of mine has this, like when he's under this attack, under the cloud, the fog, whatever you want to call it, the devil is a punk and a liar. Mm-hmm. Call him out, shine the light. And that's how we can take back, because, and we see this, Dom does not take it back. He is living constantly under the feelings of guilt.
Right.
Because something he did out of love for his wife ended up destroying her. And he feels he carries the burden because he planted the seed. There are things that we did, that the same thing. I did this. We've left a trail of mistakes, a trail of broken things, because we live in a world of broken people. But we can't live off of that identity and that reality. We can't live where guilt is shaping everything. We have to trust that Jesus is going to redeem it, even if it doesn't look like it.
So, you asked the question, like, what do we do? And the very simple answer is submit to God. Like, come back into an awareness of him. He's always with you. He's omnipresent, right? But often we're not aware of him, right? We're not aware of his presence. And so you have to come into an awareness of him. You have to consciously choose to turn, because he's right there. You don't have to go far. You just have to turn. He's right there. And you have to turn your heart to him and submit and say, God, what's true? I don't know what's true, right? That's a submissive, humble thing, right? I don't know what's true. Right. I'm submitting to you because he is truth. we have to align ourselves with him. And that means making him the focal point. That means saying, okay, you are truth, you are king, you are God, because then we can resist the devil and he will flee from us. That's from James, right? Submit to God first, and then you can, now he can expose what's going on. Now in that light, if you bring it to the light, the one thing the devil doesn't want you to do is to bring it into the light. That's the one thing he doesn't want you to do, is to expose him for what he's doing.
Because if we know the idea isn't originating from us, we can reject it. Just like they said, if I know you planted the idea, it's never going to take root.
That's right.
But if I think I planted it, it's going to grow terrible fruit.
and part of that coming into the presence of the Father is him saying, no, you're a son. No, you're a daughter. Yeah, but I did this in the past. I know, but you're my son. Here, let me put a robe on you. Here, let me put a ring on your finger. Here. No, but I, no. Right? He won't even listen.
Yeah.
He won't even listen to it. He'll say,
shush.
No, just come. Let's have a party. Like let's come to the party. Let's hang out. You're my son, you're my daughter. And when he says, no, I'm a failure, he says, yeah, but in me, you're already successful. You're seated at the right hand of God in heaven forever. How much more successful can you get? No, but whatever, I'm abandoned. No. I am with you always, right? Like he speaks these truths that we can't. What's awesome about those truths, I mean, I guess maybe some people don't think they're awesome. What's awesome about those truths is that we can't achieve them. We can't achieve him being with us always, right? It's not something that we can earn. It's something we just have to rest in and believe and receive. And again, and once we do that, those ideas take root and have consequences, and life from truth happens instead of death and more hurt and more wounds, right? That's a virus too, except in a good way. That's contagious too.
Yep. Resilient, contagious, and defines us.
The truth, and what's awesome about the truth is you can't stop it. You can't stop it. The truth is winning and will win over a lie. If you believe it and live it, it will win. And it's going to win whether I participate in it or not. It's going to win. Because reality will... You can live by a lie as long as you want, but true reality will snap you back into place. And my son's starting to learn this as he's starting to get more and more consequences at school. And I keep telling him, I'm just letting him do stuff. I'm like, okay, but I'm telling you not to do it because I love you and I don't want you to face the consequences. And now he's doing it and he's facing the consequences. And I don't want him to face consequences, which is why I told him not to do it. But I'm telling him, this is reality. This is a hard wall. And you can keep beating your head up against it all you want, but it's not hurting the wall. And I'm not telling you not to do it because I don't love you. I'm telling you to do it because I'm trying to help you, like Gandalf, right? I'm not a thief. I'm not a robber. I'm not trying to take anything from you. I'm trying to give to you. But that truth, man, is firm and it's secure and it's a rock and it takes time, but it has redemptive consequences. It will redeem things in your life over time if you'll just stay consistent with it. And then when you're not, just come back to him and hear him say, "You're a son. It's okay. I got you." And just keep coming back to him and just let that be your discipline, because he will show you where you've been lied to, and the truth that he tells you will affirm you. It will lift you up. It will show you value, and it will show you that other people are worthy of love as well.
So we pray over you guys that God's light will shine in your life, in your hearts, in your minds, that The enemy's lies will be revealed. The agreements you've been making will be revealed. And you have the opportunity to break it.
Amen.
Say, reject the lie and replace it with the truth. And when you replace it with the truth, like you said, Britt, that's a seed. And it's a different idea. The enemy's ideas also resilient, contagious, define us, and will destroy us.
Good.
They have the opportunity. God's ideas, God's truth, also resilient, contagious, can define us, but are to give us life, to give us freedom, to give us more of who the truth of who we actually are.
Right.
So this has been Paul McDonald and Britt Mooney taking you into the content portion of Inception, as opposed to the technical stuff Grayson and I talked about. We hope that you enjoyed it, and we hope that you join us next time here on the Men at the Movies podcast.
Something inside has been awakened. I can no longer be who I was before. But if I am no longer who I was, who am I to be?